Hello everyone, this is Krishna Priya. So today I'll be trying to solve some verbal ability questions from a CDS question paper. In fact, I'll be looking at CDS 2025 part 1. Now, if you've had a quick look at the question paper, you would have known by now that there were these new questions that were asked where a student was expected to find the relationship between two given sentences, statement A and statement B, and you were supposed to find the logical relationship between these statements. These are what you call as verbal ability questions. So this is what we're going to try learn how to do on the session. Great, fine. So what do we want before all that? Well, I want you to make sure that you have the PDF of the question paper with you, or maybe the hard copy of the question paper. Anything would be great. Yeah. And make sure you have a small notepad with you so that you can jot down certain points, certain vocabulary, and that will definitely help you in the long run. Great. If that's what you have, well, let's get right into it. Wonderful. Great. So let me first take the question for you. So in CDS 2025 part 1, I think from question number 41 to question number 50 were verbal ability questions, similar questions. Okay, fine. So let's read the directions properly. I'll read it for you. Let's take it slow. In the following items, a pair of statements, statement 1 and statement 2 is given. Select the most appropriate and relevant correlationship of the second statement to the first from among options A, B, C, and D, and mark your response on the answer sheet accordingly. Now, this is where I want to tell all my students the basic important thing to do, which is to read the guideline properly. So, if, for example, in this one, they've asked you to find the relationship of the second statement with respect to the first. Okay, and if it is the other way around, say for example, the relationship of the first statement with respect to the second, the meaning changes, the relation changes. Do you get my point? So it's very, very important that you read the question properly and understand the question properly. And since you have the hard copy, usually you get the hard copy for the CDS exam, make sure that if you can just underline those statements, second statement, second statement. So in 2025 part 1 and part 2, they did ask the relation of the second statement with respect to the first. But having said all that, they change it from 2026. Maybe from 2026, they'll ask you the relationship of the first statement with respect to the second. So it is your duty to figure out what they were asking. Okay. So please note it, underline, circle it, however you want, just highlight the question. Okay. Once that is done, you're good to go. We'll read the questions one by one and figure out how do we do it. Okay. So how are we going to do this? Well, here are my 4 suggestions for you. Let me go back to my screen again. These are my 4 suggestions. I hope you can see my screen as well. Just a second. Oops. Yes. See, well, my first suggestion to you is that when you get 2 statements, statement A and statement B, followed by 4 options, try to find the relationship between statement A and statement B on your own before looking at the options. Do you get my point? So try to figure out, try to ask yourself, so what do I feel is the relation between these 2 statements even before looking at the options? Because that will help you narrow down the choices. Okay, if you didn't get what I'm trying to say, do not worry. I'm pretty sure you'll get what I'm saying when I do a question. Got it? Cool. The second one, since in these questions they asked you to find the relationship of the second statement with respect to the first, I would urge you, or I would rather look at the second statement first. I'll try to read the second statement properly first and then connect it to the first statement. But these are all suggestions. These are not the right way to do this. It's just one of the many ways to do it. Okay. So if you have other ways to do it, suggestions, please let me know. Great. Fine. The third is, I would say, one of the most important things to do is to rephrase the sentence if required. Say, for example, if you have looked at some of the questions, you would know the sentences are too complicating, okay, too complex for the student because they're trying to intentionally make it difficult for the student. But you have to find the relationship, plus you have to figure out these sentences, long sentences. So if it is difficult, try to rephrase the sentence without changing the meaning. Okay, so how do we do that? Do not worry, we'll see that as well. Okay, rephrasing is important at times. And fourth important point is to make sure that you delete the wrong answers or delete the wrong choices, options before searching for the right one. Now, this sounds like a very silly statement, a cliche sort of a statement, but it often works. It's one of the most effective ways to look at the right answer. Okay, what will the answer not be? And that will take you to the right answer. So these are my 4 personal suggestions to you. Now you can work on it and let's see how this helps in these questions, with these questions. Okay, wonderful. So let's look at the first question. Fine. And I'm going to do it with you slowly. Got it? Yes. So this is our question. Statement number 1 says, the snowy albatross is among the largest birds that fly in the world. Statement number 2, it has the widest wingspan among all birds with lengths reaching up to 12 feet. Okay, I have read the sentence. Now the question says the second statement. So I need to understand the second statement better. So I'm going to do what I just said I would do. I'm going to read the second statement first. It has the widest wingspan among all birds. Who has? What has? Well, the snowy albatross. In fact, I'm going to write it like that as well. Okay, so the snowy albatross has the widest wingspan. That's interesting. You just used a superlative degree. You're saying that it has got the widest wingspan among all birds with lengths reaching up to 12 feet. Okay, you're talking about its wingspan. You're talking about the snowy albatross and saying that it has got the widest wingspan. I got the meaning there. Let's go back to statement number 1. The statement number 1 says that the snowy albatross, well, it's still about the snowy albatross, saying that it is among the largest birds. So you're not saying that it is the largest bird. You're saying that it is among the largest birds that fly in the world. So, okay, it's also about flying, about the bird and it being one of the largest. Okay, so now before looking at the options on my own, let me try to figure out a connection. What do I understand? I realized that both the statements are about the snowy albatross. Yeah, both the statements are about snowy albatross. Both the statements talk something about its size, it being one of the largest birds, it having the biggest or the widest wingspan, etc. So it seems like they're talking about similar things. Would you agree with that? So the two sentences are talking about similar ideas. Okay, they are not saying opposite things. They are not saying that though this is correct, this is not correct, nothing like that. Okay, similar things. If that is said, you let's see if that will help me narrow down certain options. Let's go back to the options now. The second statement contradicts the first. Well, absolutely not, because they were talking about similar ideas. How are they a contradiction? No. Are they contrasting with the first? No, because contrast also means you're talking about different things. Okay? Contradiction is also difference, contrast is also difference. The only difference between contradiction and contrast is that in a contradiction, two statements cannot be true at the same time. But in contrast, two statements can be different and can be true and can stay independently on its own. Okay? Do not worry, that's not the question here. Anyway, so it's not contradiction, it's not contrast. Now, here is the catch. Is it confirm or reinforce? Now, what do you mean by confirm? Confirm means to verify a statement. Would you agree with that explanation? Confirm a statement means to verify the statement, saying that, oh, that is true. You tell me something and your friend confirms it, right? Saying that, or I'll confirm it based on the record. So just trying to prove a point. Does this prove this? Okay, could be the answer, but we are not yet there. Let's look at option D as well. What is option D? It says reinforce. Anything saying re means doing something again or doing something one more time, right? So to reinforce means you are coming up with a new statement. This is very important. A reinforcing statement means you are bringing a new statement that supports your first statement. Supports your first statement. I'm just writing it here. Are you able to understand what I'm trying to say here? So you will come up with a new statement that supports your old statement or the first statement. Let's go back to that. Is statement 2 confirming or reinforcing? Let's look at it. The snowy albatross has the widest wingspan. Does that prove that it is one of the largest birds in the world? Or does that prove that it's one of the largest birds? Not exactly. It's not a proof. Just because the snowy albatross has got the widest wingspan would not make it one of the biggest birds. Do you get my point? Because there are so many other conditions that has to be that conditions that have to be checklisted for a bird to be considered one of the largest birds. Do you get what I'm saying? So it having the widest wingspan does not make it one of the biggest birds, but it supports the claim. It does not prove the claim, but it supports the claim. Do you get what I'm saying? Take it slow. A bird having the biggest wingspan does not make it the biggest bird or one of the biggest bird, but it can support the claim. Do you get it? So therefore, it is not confirming. The answer is reinforce. Question number 41, D is the answer. It reinforces the first. Okay. But if you're saying the same idea again and again, that's what you call as reiterate. Just note it somewhere there. Sorry. Oops. The word is reiterate. Okay, which is different from reinforce. Reinforce means you're coming up with a new statement that supports your old statement. Reiterate just means that you're saying the same thing again differently. Okay, that is reiterate. This one is reinforce. Is that clear now? So answer is 41D. Now can we look at 42? Are you ready to go there? Fine, do not worry. Let's read the sentences first. Statement number 1 says, a scientific theory is first proposed as a hypothesis. Okay. Statement 2. After it is subjected to inquiry and is proven, it becomes a thesis. Okay, fine, whatever. Let's go back to statement 2 again. After it is subjected, what is subjected? What has to be subjected to inquiry? When something is subjected to inquiry and it's proven, it becomes a thesis. So you're talking about hypothesis here. Okay, so you're talking about hypothesis. You're saying that a hypothesis is taken, then it is subjected to inquiry. A lot of checking, fact checking, questioning, everything happens, and then it's finally proven. Okay, when your hypothesis is proven, it becomes thesis. That's what statement 2 says. Fine. Let's see statement 1. A scientific theory is first proposed as a hypothesis. So, any scientific theory first begins as a hypothesis. Okay, fine. Just see whether we can come up with our own relations. Well, my first feeling is that they're both talking about similar things. In fact, they are talking about hypotheses. How? Statement number 1 says that any scientific theory first starts as a hypothesis. Okay, and statement 2 says that a hypothesis later goes on through a process of inquiry and proof and everything. It's subject to inquiry, and eventually it becomes thesis. So whatever the case be, whatever the relation be, I understand that both the statements talk about hypotheses, how a scientific theory begins as a hypothesis, and finally how it's proven to become thesis. So they are not contradictory ideas for sure. Okay, so let's see if I can um, come up with the options here. The second statement proves the first. I do not know about that. Hypothesis the first. Well, that's just to freak you out. That's for sure not the answer. Hypothesis the first. No. Challenges the burden of proof. Whatever this be, burden of proof or whatever, there is no question of challenge here. You're not challenging a claim there, questioning a claim there. So we are removing this as well. Okay. Now the question is it A or D? Does the statement prove or extend the idea? Does to prove statement number 1? It doesn't prove anything of that sort. All it says is that statement 1 says that a scientific theory begins as a hypothesis. Statement 2 says hypothesis after proof and inquiry becomes a thesis. So it's talking about the chronology of events, right? It talks about how this begins like that, goes through a process, becomes this. So in other words, it is extending the information, right? So the answer is D. Is that clear? So 42, the answer is D. Is that clear? Not a proof. It's not a verification of the statement. All good? Fine. Let's look at 43 and try to read it on your own. Let's do it together. Fine. 43. Statement 1. The manhunt for the perpetrator of the crime spread across the entire state. Statement 2. There was deep public anger triggered by the enormity of the crime. Okay, cool. Let's look at statement 2 now. There was deep public anger triggered by the enormity of the crime. Now, here's a clue for you. A vocabulary can save you sometimes. The word is triggered by the enormity of the crime. Now, if a deep public anger is triggered, something has to happen before that, right? So, an event happens, then it triggers a reaction. Got it? So, what caused the public anger? Well, the enormity of the crime. Enormity means how huge it was, how big a deal it was. Okay. So, a crime happened. If I have to write it chronologically, let's write it. A crime happens. Okay. A crime happens. And it's such a big deal. It's a huge event. Okay. And that causes what? That causes public anger. Okay. And that's a deep public anger. So far, are you able to understand what I'm saying? So a crime happens and then that triggers a public anger. All this information is said in statement 2. Clear? Now, what is statement number 1? Statement number 1 says the manhunt means searching for this criminal. Okay. So the search, I'm just going to rewrite it. See, this is where I told you sometimes it's great to rephrase a sentence so you don't think too much. So the search for the perpetrator or the one who did the action, the aggressor, the criminal. For the time being, let's write criminal. Okay. So the manhunt or the search for the person who committed the crime spread across the entire state. So the search for the man began. Now think about it. What would have happened first? First, crime happens, then public anger increases, and eventually a search for the criminal starts. Right? So this is where you're talking about the search. So can I write search as the third event? Search for the criminal. That is the next event. So first crime happens, public anger begins, and then this happens. Search for the criminal happens, which is said in statement number 1. Now take it slowly, look at the question. How is the second statement related to the first? Is the second statement a precursor to the first? Well, let it be there. Let's keep it there. Does it follow the first? Let's keep it aside. Does it contradict the first? Well, that's not okay. I don't think you can see the question there. Sorry. Yes. So, does it contradict the first? Definitely not. There is no question of a contradiction. Both are talking about a crime, how people were agitated, how they were searching for the man who did or the person who did it. So it's not a contradiction. Does it alter the premise of the first? Alter means to change. Are you changing the story, the premise, or something of that sort? No, they are related. No questions there. Now, here is the question. Is it a precursor to the first or does it follow first? Precursor means that which happens before. Okay. So let's see. Does the second statement happen before the first or does it happen after the first? Simple as that. Does the events in statement number 2 happen before the first or after the first? Well, you have the answer, right? Statement number 2, chronologically speaking, events in statement number 2 happens first, right? There is a deep public anger because of the crime. Okay. So statement 2 happens chronologically first. Then happens the manhunt. So therefore, statement number 2 happens before statement number 1. Therefore, A is the answer, precursor to the first. Be very careful, read the question properly, and see, this is where I told you. Had the question been different, if it is the first statement, if the question was a first statement, the answer would have been B. Do you see that? And it changes perspective. So be careful, read the questions properly. Is that clear now? Yes. So question number 43, if I'm not wrong. Yes. 43, the answer has to be A. Okay, cool. Now let's do two more and then we'll stop it for the time being. Fine. I hope you're not overwhelmed so far. Fine. Let's read question number 44. Statement number 1. Awareness about one's own personality type is very important. Statement number 2. Self-awareness is a difficult goal for most people. Okay, cool. Let me read statement 2 again. Self-awareness is a difficult goal for most people. Self-awareness, so being aware of yourself, is a difficult goal for most people. So statement 2 talks about self-awareness, okay, and the conditions, whatever that is. Statement number 1. Awareness about one's own personality type. Well, see, this is where I tell you rephrase. Don't confuse yourself. Awareness of one's own personality type. What do you mean by that? In other words, self-awareness, right? Let me even write it like that's nothing but self-awareness. Okay, awareness about one's own personality just means self-awareness. So let me read it now. Self-awareness is very important. Statement number 1. Statement number 2. Self-awareness is a difficult goal for most people. Okay, so just from these two statements, let me come up with my conclusion. My conclusion is that both of them are talking about similar things. They are both talking about self-awareness and they're both true. They are not saying that though it is very important, no one is doing it. Nothing like that. Okay, no contradictions there, no differences there, no contrasts there. Okay, so let me see if I can eliminate certain answers. Definitely not contradict the first, not contrast the first. Is it confirms the first? What do you mean by confirm? Does it has to verify, right? Does it verify? Just because it is important, say for example it is difficult, it's a difficult goal. Okay, statement 2 says that it's a difficult goal. Is it difficult because it is important? Does it prove the point? It doesn't prove the point. Okay, fine. So in other words, confirm is not the answer. Maybe you are not very sure that why can't it be confirmed? But for that you should know what contrapuntal means, right? The question is contrapuntal vis-a-vis the first? Okay, vis-a-vis there means face to face. Okay, or with respect to, you can read it like that, with respect to. Let me write it like that, with respect to. Okay, now what do you mean by contrapuntal? Contrapuntal means you are given two independent statements, okay, which can exist at the same time. They are similar statements, not opposite statements. They are similar statements, independent statements that can exist together. They work harmonically. Okay, they're very harmonious there. So if that is the case, don't you think that is the answer? Because 44 statement 1 says self-awareness is very important. Statement 2 says self-awareness is a very difficult goal, right? Both are true. Both the statements can exist together. One need not be wrong for the other to be right. You get it? So therefore it's not contradiction. Both statements are true. Both statements are about self-awareness. Both statements are not differing statements which are like glaringly opposite or anything like that. It's just that that is also true. Okay, it's important, but it's also very difficult to achieve. So they are harmonious, independent statements that can work together. Therefore, the answer is contrapuntal. Okay, so if you want the correct meaning of contrapuntal, which means that you have multiple perspectives, when multiple perspectives, when they can exist together, exist independently, not dependent, independently. Okay, then that is contrapuntal. Is that clear now? Wonderful. See, this is where vocabulary becomes a saving grace. If you don't know the meaning of contrapuntal or vis-a-vis, it can be tricky and you would naturally go for an option that sounds similar. It may not be the answer. Okay, so don't immediately go to a confirm. Think about what you mean by confirm. Okay, now question number 45.